Hi, the title of this project is Customer Segmentation Using K-means Clustering. The problem statement: a retail store wants to get insights about its customers and then build a system that can cluster the customers into different groups. The goals for this project is to customize market programs that will be suitable for each of its customer segments, and then to raise further market research questions, as well as providing directions to finding the solutions. The first step I took is to import my libraries, and I imported the NumPy library, the Pandas library to read my data sets, then the Matplotlib, Seaborn for visualization, the scikit-learn, K-means for my clustering, and then the min-max scaler for my normalization. After that, I imported my data set into my pandas data frame and carried out exploratory data analysis. I started by I started by renaming the gender column, which was actually spelled incorrectly. I renamed it, and then I checked for the shape. There are 200 data points, and there are four columns. That is, yes, 200 data points and four columns. Then I checked for the descriptive statistics of my data sets using the describe function. I also checked for the data types, and then I went on to check if there are null values or missing values. Luckily, there are no missing values. I also checked if my data set has duplicate values, and there are no duplicate values. The next thing I was interested in doing was to check to find out if there's a relationship between the annual income and the spending score. And to find out the relationship between two numerical variables, I used the scatter plot, and this is the scatter plot output over here. So just to give a little insight, the x variable is the annual income, and then the y variable represents the spending score. Over here, you could see that customers who earn between $20,000 to $14,000 annually, they have a spending score of between 0 to 40, meaning that they don't spend so much at the retail store. Because I'm interested in working with only the annual income column and then the spending score, I had to select this feature out of my data set since I'm not interested in the age or the gender column. So I had to select this feature using the feature selection, and then I put it in this x variable. I also did feature normalization. The reason for doing this is because I want the data elements in the annual income and the spending score to have a common scale, so that I can have in order to have improved performance of my image clustering algorithm. And then the range of this scale was between zero to one, and I was between 0 to 1. I used the max function, as you can see over here, and then here you can see the range of the data element is between 0 0 to 1, which is here. You can see the output 0 0.5 0.5. This represents the annual income. This represents the annual income. This represents the spending score. You can see the data element 0.5, 0.3, and there are no values that are above 1, and there are no values that are below 0. So you can see 0 and you have 1. So I also wanted to find out the optimum. I also wanted to find out the optimum values, the optimum clusters that I have. Also wanted to find out the optimal number of clusters, and for that I used the WCSS method. WCSS stands for within clusters sums of square. And after I created the for loop to find the WCSS value, that's the optimum number of clusters, and then I used the elbow method for to visualize it, and I used the elbow method and I use the elbow method to pick the number of clusters. From here, the elbow method, this is the lowest point, that's the elbow point, and it is between 4 and 6. So at this point, this is 5. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So from what I wrote here, from the above graph, one can see that the number of cluster 4 to the number of cluster 5, they are being between cluster 4 and cluster 6. There's a decrease, which is this cluster, which is at cluster 5. Hence, I choose the k value for my data set as 5. Now, I trained the next step was to train the clustering model using the I trained the clustering model using the initialization step for, and then I got these values, which returns the number of each of the data points. These numbers represent each of the data points. From 2 to 1 represents the data point. So remember, from the first, when I check the shape, there are 200 data points. So here there are 200 points from 2 to 1. Mind you, there's 0 here, but there are five clusters that I've chosen for this. So what this means is 0 is 1, 1 is 2, 2 is 3, 3 is 4, and then 4 is 5. So it represents each of the data points. Now I checked the check oh I checked I checked the centers of our clusters, and this is that's the centroid. This this these values, this represents x the x coordinates, the x axis, the values of the x axis, that's the centroid values for the x axis. This is represents the values for the centroids of the y axis. And you know there are 5 clusters, and that's why there are 5 centroids: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. After which I visualized all of the clusters so that I visualized all of the clusters, and here we are using this. I visualized it on a scatter plot. Yes, I visualized it on a scatter plot. Remember, this label over here represents the data points for each of these clusters. It represents the data points for each of these clusters. This label represents the data points for each of these clusters. So I will explain what this is. This is the scatter plot for the first cluster. X remember, X is the feature selection for the which is the annual income and the spending score. So this 0 represents the annual score, which is on the x-axis, and this 0 represents the annual income, which is on the x-axis, and then this one represents the spending score, which is on the y-axis. This 0 represents the first cluster, this one represents the 2. So it's plotting all of the points that have zeros, like cluster that have zeros the on the x axis. That is the annual score, annual income, sorry, on the annual income. And this S is the size, this is the color, this is the label. So this is for the x-axis, this is for the y-axis. That's why one here represents the spending score, and zero over here represents the annual income. So it's picking. Okay, I think you must have gotten that. So I also wanted to add the clusters to the scatter plot so that we can see how the points how the clusters are gathered around the centroid. Here, over here, what this means is this is for the x coordinates. This is for the x axis, that's the values. This is for the x, this is for the x axis values of the centroids. This is the y axis values of the centroid. This here represents the size of the centroids. This C is the color of the centroid, and this is the marker that I use, which is the star. And then I put in these other details. So let's see what the scatter plot says. So over here, remember there are five clusters. That means the customer groups or customer segments have been customers have been grouped into five segments. We have cluster one, we have cluster two, we have cluster three, we have cluster four, we have cluster five. This star is the centroid. This star marker is the centroid for each of the clusters, and that's why you see they are gathered around. That's why you see the points. They are gathered around the centroid. Now, what is the business insights from this? Let's start with cluster one. Cluster one represents the customers who their average they have the earn average income, and they are careful about how they spend. They are average spenders. This set of people, they are careful about how they spend, their how they spend at the retail store. And then cluster two are the customers. They're these yellow guys. They are the customers who earn they're high income earning customers, and they also spend a lot of money. What this means that these are the group this second clusters, they are the group of customers that are bringing profits into the retail store. So what the marketing team would do, I would advise they do is that they target this group of customers, give them promotions, give them bonuses, give them discounts, and the third clusters are the red guys over here. They are the low income earners, and they also spend they have a low spending score. I want to assume that, of course, when you don't earn so much, you are careful about how you spend. Then we have the purple guys, which is the cluster four. They earn low and they have a high spending score. My assumption over here is that it could be that this group of customers they're satisfied with the services provided by the retail store, and then they don't really care whether they earn low. They just want to, because of the level of satisfaction they have, maybe they are loyal, and they they are satisfied, and that's why the spending score is high, is an assumption. And then we have the fifth cluster, which is this customers over here, the blue guys. They spend, they earn high, but they don't, their spending score is low. My assumption is that it's possible that they are not satisfied. They are just like the opposite of these guys who earn low and spend high. These guys earn high and spend low. Possibly they're